Okay, it's 4:01. We do actually have a quorum, so why don't we go ahead and get started? I will go ahead and call together this regular meeting of the Operations Planning Committee for Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. Thanks, everybody, for joining. First up on our agenda is the OPC minutes from our last meeting on January 20th. I have read through them and they look okay to me. Does anyone have any edits for the minutes? Okay, can I get a motion to approve? Jeremy moves, Lori seconds, all in favor. Okay, minutes approved, thank you. All right, I will go ahead and go first with my update. A couple of things. One is, if you have not heard, the RTM meeting for tonight has actually been postponed until tomorrow. They were worried that they didn't have enough notice and have decided to postpone that meeting tonight, which was actually rescheduled from yesterday due to the snowstorm. So just keep that in mind for your planning purposes. That we've now received, I think, sufficient applications for both our sidewalk committee and our conservation committee. I'm hoping to have interviews in the next couple of weeks and get those committees stood up with full membership so that they can move forward. So thank you to everybody who has expressed an interest in helping with that. A big thank you to everybody who helped with the storm yesterday. This is Public Works. This is the Public Works staff, if you will, at the Board of Education, Parks and Rec, all of our police department, the 3 fire departments, Post 53 EMS. Everybody played a role in getting us through that storm yesterday and getting the roads clear and getting us to where we could function today. I know the schools had to be closed today, but that actually wasn't the fault of the administration. I think it was that the buses were not available. At least that's what the superintendent told me. But hopefully all will be back tomorrow. And Robin, you can update us on that. But I really appreciate everybody's effort. It was a great effort to get that done. Another topic is the charter and ordinance effort that I talked about with the RTM in January. Purpose of that is to really take a look at our boards and commissions and anything we can do to make those a better destination for our volunteers, make them more efficient, clear up any overlap with other boards and commissions, clarify scope and responsibility for each one. I've made substantial progress on that, and we have a few internal meetings to gather feedback, the first draft of which I will be providing to the RTM so that they can start to think about it and work on it, which will start that process moving forward. One other topic is the Norotan Heights Fire Department has a wall that's a $2 million project. This is a wall that runs along Norotan Avenue that's between the VFW Hall and the Norotan Heights Fire Department. They've needed to do some repairs on that, and I can say that project is moving forward on schedule and looks to be finishing up as planned later this year. So appreciate everybody's efforts on that. A few dates for me to highlight: the budget presentations for both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education budgets to the Board of Finance will be on March 3rd. I will be there, and I'm assuming Robin will as well. I'm giving a talk to the Darien Men's Association on the social fabric of the town, and that will be on the next day, March 4th. So that is coming up. And that is about all that I have to report for OPC today. Does anyone have any questions for me? Okay, we will move along to Robin, Board of Education. You're on mute.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure everyone knows, I'll just give a very quick update on the budget. The board on February 5th unanimously voted to approve the superintendent's operating and capital budgets. And those came in at an approved budget of a 3.51% increase, which was $130,179,922 for the operating budget, and a capital budget of $1,915,550. It's worth noting that the budget that the board voted to approve was decreased from the original budget that had been 3.88% increase. So we voted to approve a 3.51% increase. The additional reduction of $460,000 was due to an early retirement offering that will result in additional savings in healthcare, salary savings, and turnover. And the teachers that took advantage of that, I think we're happy to do so with that offering. So The budget focus overall was really focused on excellence in teaching and learning and maintaining BOE class size guidelines. And Dr. Byrne did a great job, I think, in presenting a budget that was pretty financially responsible. And as I had mentioned previously, I think they creatively looked at some ways to get additional reductions in efficiencies, including moving to self-insurance and among some other things. And I won't go into the details of the budget, but I will be presenting that, as John said, at the finance meeting the Board of Finance meeting, March 3rd. And then the Board of Finance will vote on the budget on April 7th, and it moves to the RTM on May 11th. I do want to take the opportunity, and I will mention tonight's Board of Ed meeting that had initially been scheduled was canceled due to school being out of session, and a number of our board members were stranded in other locations as well. So we're rescheduling tonight's Board of Ed meeting, and a large reason for the school not being in session today, as John mentioned, was that First Student, our bus provider, had not, although they had plowed the lot where the buses were, their staff were not able to get there to actually shovel out each individual bus. And so even if we had done a 2-hour delay, we were concerned the buses actually would not be ready on time because of the amount of work that would have been. So unfortunately, and in addition to that, all of the other Durgay schools in our area had already canceled school for today. So Dr. Byrne had to weigh being the only school in our surrounding area to hold school if something did happen, because the roads were still not that great in other areas where our teachers were coming from and staff. I wanted to take this opportunity also just to highlight one issue that had been coming up in the media over the past few weeks. I'm not sure, you might have seen it in the headlines. It was involving a Darien High School teacher. And I wanted to just comment on that. I'm not able to give a lot of information because of legal reasons, since this is an ongoing personnel matter and an ongoing active investigation by the school district. So for legal reasons, I cannot actually, and the board cannot formally make a statement about what is going on or even about what we are doing, because that could violate due process, legal kind of things for the employee as we go through the employee investigation. But that being said, for this group, I do want to just clarify some things that have come up because there was significant publicity in the papers. It was a situation where we were notified in November of alleged behavior by a teacher, and a student was involved. Immediately that teacher was put on a leave of absence, administrative leave. And during that time, then there were investigations that were taking place. That involved the police department and DCF as well. And the district could not begin our own investigation until those investigations were completed, which is why it's not until now, after an arrest had actually taken place by the Darien Police Department, that now Darien schools are doing an active investigation. Dr. Byrne has communicated a lot of helpful information to the community, and specifically highlighting our procedures around hiring procedures, our background check process, and all of the policies and procedures that the school district follows, which are actually pretty significant in what we do when we are hiring employees. However, in this particular instance, a key issue that came to light was that our current Connecticut state laws restrict the information that is provided to public schools, which limits our ability to get full information during the hiring process. And as a result of that, some of the actions that we are taking, first of all, is we are going to be reviewing in detail our policies, procedures, and training for all employees with a goal of identifying where we might be able to make necessary improvements, aside from what might be able to be changed with Connecticut state law. So we're going to go into that in detail. The Board of Education Policy Committee would be following whatever recommendations Dr. Byrne and the administration can bring to us. But secondly, and a very key part of what we are doing in this effort is working with Representative Tracy Mara, who, along with Dr. Byrne, has worked on new proposed legislation to enhance state disclosure laws regarding school employees. And she was able to actually submit the new proposed legislation, working with Dr. Byrne, in time for the current legislative session. And we're hopeful that they would take up these proposals, which would lead to the next process, which would be a public hearing. We're not sure yet if the State Education Committee will end up and the legislators will take up the proposed bills, but we'll let you know as we hear more information. Just to give you a little more information on the proposed legislation that Representative Mara has put forth are number one, stronger reporting requirements that would require relevant misconduct findings or serious allegations to be shared with future school employers about anyone who might be applying for a job at a public school. And additionally, to ensure districts have the information that we need in order to make safe hiring decisions. Currently, the state laws do not necessarily let a superintendent or a district know of certain allegations if there were charges that were made but that were dismissed. And unfortunately, and I can't say a lot more about this, but the media has written a number of articles on this issue, in this particular issue. So we're hoping that that proposed change in the legislation could end up helping our district to make safer hiring decisions and protect all public school districts in Connecticut. Additionally, there's a new proposed legislation that Representative Mara put forward, which was to protect student privacy in the media. And this would be to explore whether we can have stronger legal protections or safeguards with FOIA in order to protect minors from being identified in the media when, for instance, a journalist makes a FOIA request to a police department. And unfortunately, in this case, there was enough detail in some of these articles that it was actually the minor that was involved, unfortunately, I think was more apt to be identified. And that was a really tough situation, I think, for the student and for the family. And so we're working together with Representative Mara to try to get these things changed, because unfortunately, this is a situation that limits the amount that we can do during our hiring process. And this is something that the board really feels strongly about. And I'm speaking on behalf of board members who are concerned about this very much. But unfortunately, we can't make a public statement at this time for those reasons. That's all I can really say about that. Dr. Byrne is going to be really the communicator on this front until the investigation that's currently ongoing is finished. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, at least in this forum. And thank you to Dr. Brodsky also for your work on hopefully to get the full state delegation on board with the proposed legislation that Tracy is trying to move forward. We really appreciate your help as well.
Of course. Any questions for Robin? Okay. Next up,
that's all I
Jim
have.
is not, sure. Yeah, Jim is not on the line, so we will go next to Jeremy, who is sitting in for Steve Olvani and Planning and Zoning.
Right, I think Steve is also trapped somewhere with his travel plans coming back, trying to get back here by tonight's P&Z meeting. A couple items of interest. Tonight, the commission is expected to vote on the project at the corner of Heights Road and Edgerton Street, put forth by John Vaccaro. I think there's a good chance they do vote on it tonight. If not, they'll hit it next week, but likely tonight. Wanted to give everyone an update on the plan of conservation and development. As I realize, today's February 24th, and the goal is to finish in basically about 2 months from today. So the consultant H&H is basically meeting with the commission almost every week between now and then, covering a different chapter, a different topic. So for tonight, they're going to cover transportation and mobility. Next week, John, they're going to talk about the Board of Selectmen vision that was put together by the selectmen. The week after that, they'll be talking about the environment and community facilities in an effort to have a final draft done by the end of April, such that they can have a public hearing in July. Fingers crossed, it's a little ambitious, but we're hopeful to get it done on that schedule. The other thing that the commission is working on and monitoring, to follow up on Robin mentioned, is state legislation. There was a bill last week that was put forth and a public hearing held. I think it was last Monday or Tuesday. I think it was last Tuesday. But we continue to monitor the numerous housing bills that are put forth before we even have time as a commission to respond to last year's legislation, which we'll be doing over the next months. John, just to give you a heads up, Francis Pickering is speaking to the PZ&H committee on Thursday the 5th, and I think Linda's already put that into your schedule.
Okay.
To
Thank
hear
you.
firsthand from Westcog about some of their ideas and suggestions, not only about last year's legislation, but this year's legislation as well. Thank you to the Board of Selectmen for appointing an ARB member and an EPC member. Get us up to speed on those boards. And as I mentioned earlier, we expect that P&Z's had a vacancy for about 3 months now, and they hope to fill that vacancy possibly as soon as next week. So that'll be helpful to have full contingencies of these boards. Other than that, quiet time, but preparing for spring, which is invariably a busy time of the commission and the other land use boards.
It doesn't feel like spring is very close, Jeremy. So to the extent you can speed that up, that would be helpful. Yeah, some of this legislation that's coming up is not great. The most recent one is this Senate Bill 151 that, among other things, forces municipalities to do away with any lot size restrictions for residential zoning greater than 5,000 square feet to the extent those residential zones or properties are connected to sewer systems. So I think I've got that right.
Yep.
And so you can imagine properties in town becoming like properties, say, in Malibu, California, where they're all these very narrow, there's no setbacks, and that's the way things look. So a little unclear what's driving that, but I know it has a lot of developer support. So more to come. Okay. Any questions for Jeremy?
Jeremy, the various chapters for the POCD, for instance, the ones that, impact the parks and the input the commission get, will we have a chance to review what's written and give input, or how will that work, or just
That's
it
a
is
good
what it is?
question. The goal is to have a final draft by the end of April. State statutes give kind of a 65-day waiting period before the commission can have a public hearing on it. So what's likely to happen at the end of April, if all goes well, there's a final draft of the entire document. We're going to get that out en masse, if you will, to the Board of Selectmen, RTM, Westcog, Park and Rec, Board of Ed, whoever wants to get a copy of the document for that 2-month period where we'll be taking in comments, suggestions, ideas. So I know Steve is going to get the word out as it gets closer, whether we can get it out to everyone by the end of April. If it slides into May, it wouldn't surprise me a little bit as the commission kind of fine-tunes everything. What that does, though, is it pushes that public hearing right now, which is scheduled for early July. And what we have to be sensitive to is pushing that too far into the traditional August break. So the commission's probably going to have to make a tough decision whether they want to stick to the schedule, push it, or push to September. And we'll kind of see how things work.
Okay. So the comment period is not when they deliberate the various chapters in the next few weeks, but after
Right,
the final,
exactly.
the whole.
Sometimes they move quickly. Sometimes the commission wants to see a draft 2 or 3 times,
Okay.
and we'll know better as it gets closer. Good
Okay.
question.
Thank you. So we should be thinking about that in our plan of work for possibly a
Probably
May
May.
meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great question. Okay, and finally is Parks and Rec Chair is Lori Borla.
Okay. Flip my page back to my notes. Okay. Update on Pear Tree. The building committee met the first week of the month. I've had some updates from Jen in the interim, but largely they are proceeding on schedule. I don't know how, the 2 snowstorms may have impacted that a wee bit, but I'm not hearing too much. The dredging did get completed within the necessary time frame. The sidewalks were being plotted out and worked on. The boat ramp construction was underway. So all in all, things are moving well. During the digging process in the parking lot, a pipe was discovered that was not anywhere on any of the town maps. So it wasn't in Weston and Sampson's drawings, but, working with Ed's department, it's just not on anybody's map. So they have to do some scoping work, which I think was weather dependent, to be sure that it's an abandoned pipe, but they seem to think it is, in which case it can be removed. If it is not abandoned, then there would have to be some design workarounds. I think Jen told me they might have come upon a second one as well. So there was a little bit of a surprise there, but other than that, things are moving along, and they're still anticipating being, on schedule for sort of an end of April conclusion. So, summer camp sign up, as I've mentioned before, the town children's day camps that were historically run by the youth department was merged into Parks and Rec last summer. We hired someone over this past year who will be, full-time on staff to be running those and doing other things. She's on board. Camp registration took place a few weeks ago, and I'm told it was sold out within hours, with waiting lists for all of the different camps. So, Jen and Lexi would be interested possibly in, trying to find a way to add space, but I understand there's some space restrictions. The camps are run out of the different schools. So, as of now, those are full and people are on the waiting list. Registration for the Parks and Rec's various both youth and adult programs, all sorts of kids programs, pickleball lessons, tennis lessons, summer yoga, all those things. Registration starts for Darien residents tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And some things sell out very, very quickly. And then it opens up to non-residents in a week. And that's always a very active time because there's a lot of demand for those programs. Jen Fava, our Parks Director, has been working on the permitting with P&Z for the dredging at both Tilly Pond and Cherry Lawn. We were hoping to get both of those going, in the March or so timeframe. I understand from Jen, as part of the approvals, that the EPC has asked for planting plans for both of the properties. So Jen has been working on getting those together quickly. She feels she'll be able to get the planting plan, which is less extensive, for Tilly Pond done pretty quickly, so that we can get that project moving more according to the schedule we had hoped. But it looks like that may put off the dredging at Cherry Lawn, possibly even till the fall, because we don't really want to do it over the summer when the park is very busy. And then the planting probably wouldn't be able to be done for a year from fall, because that wasn't budgeted. So we'd have to go through the next budget cycle. So that one's not moving along quite as quickly as we had hoped, based on the latest from the permitting process. Jen, also, this came up at the Parks and Rec budget discussion with the selectmen. Jen's working with the installation company for the Cherry Lawn and McGuan playgrounds, because there were some findings in the ADA audit, and the installer has also referred it out to the safety and compliance officer of the equipment manufacturer, as well as the manufacturer of the surfacing, where their issue was more like on cross slope was the particular finding, which was off by some amount. And in his written note to Jen, he did pledge, to work with us to get these items resolved. So that was good news. We do, looking back when the Cherry Lawn, for instance, project was complete, we have, a letter from the installer certifying compliance with a whole laundry list of different, regulations and requirements, including ADA. So we did have that in writing. So she's working through that with them, and they have a copy of the report. But John, I know you had asked about that at the budget meeting. So, and that is all I have. Commission meets tomorrow night.
Okay.
We normally would have met last week, but we put it off a week because of school vacations.
Got it. Okay. Any questions for Lori? Okay. That is it for our agenda. Tracy, Seth, and Jim are not here, so I will take a motion to adjourn. Okay, Robin moves and Jeremy seconds. All in favor? We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.